Turkey has started to send troops to Libya to support the government in Tripoli. It's been fending off an offensive on the capital by warlord Khalifa Haftar, which began in April. Ankara says its forces will act as deterrent as it seeks a peaceful resolution to the bloody conflict.
Teknik bilgi ve tecrübe paylaşımı noktasında bizim askerimizin oradaki görevi koordinasyondur. Ve şu anda bu koordinasyonu yapıyorlar. Ve orada bir harekat merkezi.
To discuss what's been happening in Libya, I'm joined by Francois Burgat, who is a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations, and Talha Kose, Chair of Political Science and International Relations Department at Ibn Haldun University. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. So tensions ran high when warlord Khalifa Haftar seized control of the coastal city of Sirte. He is also supported by the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Russia, and France. On the other hand, Turkey's non-combatant troop deployment upon the request of the legitimate government seem to have fueled tensions further. And now we see European leaders as well as Turkey and Russia have been trying to de-escalate the situation. Russia and Turkey called for a ceasefire, but apparently it has been rejected by the warlord Haftar. So Talha, is there any chance for a ceasefire given the current situation on the ground?
It seems that Egypt and UAE are pushing for Haftar further to take over Tripoli and turn this Berlin process in diplomatic victory. So for Haftar, he doesn't have patience to continue for a prolonged war. But I think his allies, especially UAE and Egypt, are insistent on this issue. So at the moment, with the Turkey's involvement, it will be much more difficult for Haftar to topple Tripoli government, although they may make further progress, but I think a final victory will be much more difficult. But I think allies are more interested to continue this struggle for the Haftar side.
Okay. Francois, we know Turkey and Russia were on the opposite sides in the Libyan conflict, and now they call for an intra-Libyan political process under the auspices of the United Nations. What do you think has changed, and do you believe that other countries are on board?
Well, first of all, congratulations for the timing of this program, because it is indeed, I consider it is a turning point. Why is it a turning point? It's not so well known, but Russia was not only a diplomatic player. Russia, through its Wagner company, was on the front row of the military field in Tripoli, preventing any GNA drone to fly and completing this air hegemony, which is the real core of the military superiority of the Haftar side. So it is the first time that two major players come to an agreement. It is a surprise because these players were on the two opposite sides, but they have previously in Syria demonstrated that they could go beyond their opposition. They were on the verge of a military confrontation, Turkey and Russia, when they decided to move forward in the same direction. The results are not perfect, but the results are. And in Libya, most probably, we will see these two major players. Let me tell you a little secret. What is the core of their cooperation? What do they have in common? they are really happy to share the pleasure to find, just like they did in Syria, a solution without the Western diplomacies.
All right.
They are going to achieve for the second time, they might be on the verge of achieving this success of getting a real result without the help of the Western diplomacy.
We're going to get into the Western diplomacy, of course, but Talha, tell us, what kind of an impact do you think the military and the maritime agreements between Turkey and Libya had on the warring sides as well as their supporters?
I think from the beginning, Italians, Germans, and some other European actors were in favor of GNA and the internationally recognized government. However, Turkey's agreement changed this situation. So Greece, Cyprus, southern Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt put more pressure on the Haftar side, and it made much more difficult for European actors to just support the GNA. So what they, for the moment, what they try to achieve is that on the one hand, they want a diplomatic solution. On the other hand, there's a huge pressure from the Greek side. They want to delegitimize the legitimate government and GNA for the moment. And it's a difficult situation for Europe. So on the one hand, they cannot play a significant role in diplomacy. They also have, challenges to address the Eastern Mediterranean issue. So both Libya issue and East Mediterranean issue mixed together and make this game much more complicated.
From a European Union perspective, tell us, EU diplomats urged a diplomatic solution and they rejected what they called foreign interference in the Libyan conflict. Francois, who were they referring to? And does it include all sides involved or just Turkey? And do you believe that the Europeans are catching up with the pace of these developments?
It's a cruel question because, of course, foreign intervention started as soon as Haftar moved in the landscape, as early as foreign intervention started when the French moved in with NATO. But let's forget this background of the conflict. Foreign intervention started when the Emiratis and the Egyptians, clearly, fully, militarily supported by the French, because the French special forces were on the ground early in 2014, then recently at the verge of the beginning of the confrontation in Tripoli. But of course, what they mean when they condemn foreign intervention is this move by Turkey very recently. Now, let's remember that EU is divided. EU is on both sides because Italy and France, for instance, are completely opposing on the issue. Yeah. But let's just make one point. What makes the sense of the attitude of France and this side of the conflict? France is embedded for two reasons in this conflict. They have a very comfortable commercial, industrial, military relation with the Emirates. They fuel Saudi and the Emirates, but also they buy the very cheap anti-political Islam narrative of the Emirates, which they use inside France.
But tell me, how does it fit in France's core values of democracy and multilateralism at this point?
The level of contradiction came to the extent that Tripoli was assaulted on the beginning of the assault on Tripoli was the very day when the Secretary of United Nations arrived in Benghazi to discuss with Hassan Salameh, to discuss the process. So it's one among many contradictions of the European policies. Now, just one point, why is it that Haftar did not accept the ceasefire on the 12th? Most probably, he has been, because what the common denominator of EU attitude is, let's be part of the solution.
Okay.
Let's give us some time. So fight until Berlin meeting so that we could say that we have leverage on the situation.
Okay, Talha, Europeans as well as Egypt and Emiratis, they all seem to be against this Islamic administration. So that's what they call. But ironically, Sirte had fallen because of this Salafist Mahdi 604th Brigade, which switched lines. in favor of the LNA. What do you make of it?
I think it's a stupid argument. So the argument of making Islamists as the enemy and providing whoever the strong man against the Islamists, like in the case of Sisi, doesn't work. So they
doesn't really?
No, I mean it doesn't make any sense because their main allies in the field are Medhali Salafis, who are against the moderate, more modest form of Islam that's practiced by the Libyans. We know this. So and also they make this issue a case against the Europeans, and they make it a big issue. But the potential for extremism is more with the side of Medhali Salafis and the sides that were supporting the Haftar, and they are also sponsored by Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So this
but Haftar comes to the fore as a secular military figure, isn't he? Isn't it?
His allies on the field are Medhali Salafis and other extremist
All
groups. So
right.
he just wants to topple the legitimate government, and
that's
nobody.
What it is, nothing more.
And UAE just uses these arguments to support these strong military figures.
Francois, unless a common ground found, what kind of dangers lie ahead in Libya? Is there a risk of Daesh resurgence? Or is this why Europeans are so swift in conducting diplomacy with all sides concerned? Are they concerned about oil? Are they concerned about terrorism? Or are they concerned about Daesh? And immigration as well.
They are indeed concerned by oil. But let's remind the core of the analysis of Daesh. Daesh exists in proportion of the failure of central political institutions. So make these institutions stronger, the ability of Daesh to expand will grow lower. A tiny little point, maybe a tiny little criticism on the GNA side of the road. They probably made a mistake at the very beginning of the crisis in terms of allowing the Qaddafis with Haftar. You must know that some of the pro-Qaddafi are joining. They are joining because what we call transitional justice, the ability of the winner of a revolution to leave some space for those who have lost, has been weak. You remember this head of the National Council, Moghariev, all of a sudden he had to leave because he had been the ambassador of Gaddafi. So this is a mistake. They have to find a way for the pro-Qaddafi to be reconnected to the political solution.
And I guess we'll have to wait until the Berlin conference, which will take place on January the 24th. So I'm afraid we're out of time, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.